Hey y'all, welcome to Your Best Friend's Mom. I'm Lisa, your best friend's mom, and what I want to talk to you today about is the way that you can save vegetables that are kind of either about to go bad or you're not going to get the opportunity to be able to use them before they do go bad. So I don't know about y'all, but I have done this to myself more times than I care to admit. But you know, I would go to the grocery store and I would get squash and zucchini because my intention was to cook squash and zucchini, and then things happen and you don't get a chance to do that. So what I want to do today is I want to show you how I save so much money by being able to buy fruits and vegetables in season, put them in, get them prepared, put them into my deep freeze, and then when everything is out of season, when I can't find yellow squash, when I can't find zucchini, strawberries that aren't $5 a pound, you know, those sort of things, I already have them in my deep freeze. I have a deep freeze, and I'm going to caution you before we even get started with this. I have a deep freeze. A deep freeze works differently than the freezer on top of your refrigerator. The freezer on top of your refrigerator is a frost-free item. And what that means is that it has a cycle that goes in there and it pulls out the moisture from the air within the freezer, the top part of the refrigerator. It takes that air out of there, it takes the humidity out of there so it doesn't form frost. And that's bad for food in the long term. So if you have no other option but to use the top of your refrigerator freezer, that's fine. You just need to be very aware of your time frame, because most foods, if you leave them in your refrigerator freezer, will get frostbitten or they'll get freezer burned. And you've seen it and it tastes gross and there's no getting away from it. So you want to be very, very careful to, if that's the only option that you have, to label the foods that you're putting in there with the Sharpie. And I'll show you how to do that. Let me grab my Sharpie right quick, because we always use a Sharpie. We write what it is and the date that we put it into. We still do that with our deep freeze, because we want to make sure that we're using the oldest stuff first, so that even in our deep freeze, things don't get pushed to the back, pushed to the back, pushed to the back, because they can still get freezer burned. So that's just my caution. There's a list of times, you know, weeks, whatever, that you can do, that you can use, that will tell you if you're going to be using a deep freeze, how long items can stay in there without having the fear of freezer burn, and also if you're using your refrigerator freezer. But remember, most of what I'm going to be talking to you about is the deep freeze. It is not a frost-free thing, so it doesn't have that cycle that pulls the moisture and the humidity out of the compartment, and it will not, if it's closed well and it's not creating frost, it will keep your items much longer than your regular refrigerator freezer will. But if that's all you have, that's all you have. You just need to be a little bit more aware of your time frame, what you have in there, and use your oldest stuff first. And you can always look at stuff, and if it's got ice crystals in it, you probably want to toss it, because it's going to have freezer burn and it's going to have a funky flavor to it, and we're not here for that. So, some things that you need to have, and none of these are brand specific. I just pulled the things that I had out of my deep freeze, or out of my deep freeze. Some of it I'll show you when I pull it out of my refrigerator freezer, because I moved my stuff from my deep freeze to my refrigerator freezer because I wanted it to stay cold. But these are things I pulled out of my pantry, and you can see it right back there. And those are, I pulled out my gallon-sized freezer bags, and it doesn't matter what brand. What matters is that it says freezer bag right there. It says freezer bag. They're thicker and they'll protect your food more. So I've got gallon size. I also have quart size, and you'll notice that I am not brand specific. We use what's on sale. But these are freezer quart bags. I also have wax paper, but you'll see here in a little bit that I don't always use wax paper because sometimes I use the cutting board that I actually cut the items on. This is a flexible cutting board. I like these because you can chop up everything, then you pick them up, fold them up, pour them into the bag. There's not so much of you having to get your hands dirty trying to get things in the bag. So let's get started. I've got a couple different things. I have not only vegetables, I have some fruit. I'll show you how I put my things into the freezer bags so that they can go back into the deep freeze, because what I do is I flash freeze everything on one layer. In fact, I'm going to go ahead and get my zucchini out, and I'm going to get it into the bag, and I'll show you how I have that put together. Let me scoot this over here so I got a little bit more room. Bear with me while I run over here to my freezer, because remember, I've moved these items out of my deep freeze into my refrigerator freezer just for convenience to be here at my bar so that I can show y'all how to do this in this video. So hold on. All right, so this is my zucchini, and you can see that my zucchini are all individually frozen, and I have these on wax paper on a cookie sheet. And what I want to do, and what I did, was I chopped everything, layered them individually. There's a couple of them here that are doubled up, and I don't think it's going to matter, but you don't want them to be in one big wad when they go into your freezer bag. So we're going to work a little bit quickly here because these will thaw pretty fast. So these are my zucchini. I have them on wax paper, and I'm just going to take my wax paper up just a little bit, because the wax will kind of stick, but not crazy like you can't get it up stick. But they will stick. There we go, turn loose. Okay, so because I'm going to be collecting, and this is going to sound really weird, but I'm going to be collecting zucchini all during the season, during the summer season, because that's when it's cheapest. That's when it's most available. You're not getting things that come from out of the country generally, and you're able to get the best bargain and use it to your advantage, because in February, when you want to saute some zucchini and squash together with some chicken and make, you know, a fabulous meal, you already have that because it's in your deep freeze. So I've got my bag, and I'm hoping that my bag is going to cooperate with me. It's really not feeling like it's going to. Hopefully it'll stay open. Let's turn off that fan. That might help our cause. All right, so I'm going to take this, and these are all individually stuck, and I could peel all of these off and put them in there, but by the time I get all that done, this other half here is going to be thawed, and that's not what I want to have happen. So if everything goes right, I'm going to take this, and you can see that I'm taking it. My dog is losing his mind because people are coming by on motorcycles. No other time would he be worried about this, but today he is. So his name is Leo, and he's mucho protective. Okay, so the zucchini is actually stuck to my wax paper. Not a bad thing. I'm going to take my wax paper, and I've got it kind of in a little cone, in a funnel, and I'm going to put it in here. Make sure it's all the way in the bag, and then I'm going to shake it a little bit. And when I shake it, that's going to get all of my zucchini off of my wax paper. Sometimes I give it a little bit of help. And so, bada bing, bada boom, we have no more zucchini on the wax paper. Am I going to reuse this? You darn tootin' I am. All right, so I'm going to spread that back out. It's a little damp. It's not the end of the world. So we're going to take this and we're going to lay it over here. Now remember that marker that I use? I use a Sharpie because they tend to not run when they get wet. Now, this is a really important part when you're putting things into the freezer. Air makes things stale. So I'm going to try to get this bag as flat as I can. I'm going to push my seal whichever way, whether it's a zipper thingy, whether it's yellow and blue turn green, whatever. I'm going to make it about 7/8 of the way closed, and I'm going to push the air out. And basically what I'm going to do is I'm going to get it all here. I'm going to fold it over, and I'm going to push all that air out, and you can feel it. You can feel it. It doesn't have to have every breath of air out of it, but you do want to have a lot of it out. So I'm going to seal that up. I'm going to make it flat again. I'm going to write zucchini. And I probably just didn't spell that right, but that's okay. Zucchini slices. And I'm going to put today's date on it, 7/21, I think, maybe 22. Close enough for the deep freeze, because I'm going to be using this later on and it's not going to make a lick of difference. So 2020. And so now it's ready to go into the deep freeze. What I'm going to do is I'm going to put it back into my refrigerator freezer. And like I said, I will be continuing. This, of course, isn't full. I've got a couple more, I don't know, a couple more weeks maybe, depends on how the zucchini sales are going. I have actually got some stuff growing in my garden, so we might get lucky. But I'm going to put this back in my refrigerator freezer, and later I'm going to transfer it back to my deep freeze. All right, hold on. We're going to do the same thing with the squash. And remember, I told you that I was going to show you that I don't always use wax paper. Sometimes I use the cutting board, because I was like, let's make a little experiment and see how well this works. So I have these flexible cutting boards, and I've already cut my zucchini up. It may go flying all over the kitchen, but we're going to hope not. So we're going to do the same thing with our bag. We're going to get it all squatted down here. All right, so I'm going to take my squash, and I use squash and zucchini when I make, I make a dish, and I'll show it to you one of these days. It's called Italian chicken and pasta, and it calls for zucchini and yellow squash, and those things aren't always in season and sometimes can be a little expensive. Okay, so I'm going to give this, like I did before, a little bit of help, because it doesn't want to bend as easily as the wax paper, but it's not the actual end of the world. It's going to be all right. Just kind of have to give it a little zhuzh and get it rolling. Get in there, get in there, get in there. Alrighty, moving on. There we go. A couple tried to escape on me. Got them back. Now notice that I've frozen all of these flat. They freeze quickly that way. They also thaw quickly that way. And that's why I'm trying to do this pretty fast, because I don't want them to thaw before I have the opportunity to get them into my bag. And if you're one of those folks that, is kind of freaked out because people's hands are touching, they're frozen, they're about to be more frozen, and then you're gonna cook them. But it won't hurt. So they're all off of my little cutting board. My brain just left. So again, I'm gonna be sure that I put these, this is yellow squash, and it is 7/21, 7/22. All right, so once we're gonna seal that up, we're gonna push all this down. We're gonna try to push all of the air out of it as much as we can. We're gonna zip our little zipper here most of the way closed, because we want to be able to push as much air out of this as we can. Push it all up. And then we'll seal it when it's just about as sealed up as you can go. Then I'll make it flat again. Now it's ready to go back into the deep freeze. And I'll go ahead and flatten it out again. Now the cool thing about this is that if for some bizarre reason they kind of, like these are getting a little bit thawed, so if they stick together, this is gonna sound really weird, but I'll like take the bag and slam it against the side of the cabinet and they break right up. They don't fall apart, but they do come apart. So, all right, so we have squash that's ready to go back into the deep freeze. And I'll be able to use those during the year. So, all I did really quickly, and I'm gonna go ahead and use this cutting board that I had here, and I'm gonna show you just real quick how I did that. This is my regular chef's knife. I just cut the big blossom end off and the butt end, and those go in the trash. We're not using those. Then I cut this in half again to make it a little bit easier to use. I'm gonna cut it just like this, long ways down. Both of them long ways down. Now, if I want to be fancy, I'll try to cut them all together, but you know, it doesn't take that long. And you always cut with your knife away from you, and I'll just do one of these really quickly, get it ready to go back into the deep freeze. I can tell you that currently in my deep freeze I have celery. I bought celery at Thanksgiving because celery is one of those things that we use in lots of holiday type cooking. Stews, soups, roast, those sort of things call for celery. Now, I live in a very small town. We don't have a grocery store. They always have celery at the grocery store down the road, but you know, you don't always want to have to jump in the car and run 10 miles down the road to get celery. So I always get this. I get celery, I get carrots, and I have bell peppers. I have jalapenos. Just depends upon what I want to use. I also have blackberries because we went up to the Amish community and they had a really good sale on blackberries and strawberries. So of course, thinking, oh, I can use that. Then we got to the point where I was like, oh, I haven't used those yet. They're about to go bad. So I went ahead and I cut them all up and I put them in the deep freeze. I've got them when I want them. If I want to have blackberry cobbler in November, I've got blackberries in my deep freeze. We're ready to go. So same thing with the strawberries. They're great for smoothies, those sort of things like that. So I'll just get this one cut up. Zucchini and squash tend to not yield the same amount. Like one is not going to give you the same number on a tray as another one is. So I'm just spreading these out, making them a little, hopefully I can get all of them on here and none of them have to overlap. But as you saw in the other ones that were already frozen, it's okay. It's not the end of the world. So I might have shown this to you a little backwards. Maybe I should have shown you this part and then had you see what the finished product looked like. So let me know if that was confusing, you know, because it makes sense to me because I do it. It doesn't necessarily register with me that, hey, wait, should have shown that in a different order. So these aren't all going to fit on here. And like I said, it's not that big of a deal. You can kind of wedge the little ends down in the spaces, that sort of thing like that. So, but I'm going to put this onto a cookie sheet because when I put it into the deep freeze, I want it all to lay flat because that way they don't get all wadded up. They freeze quickly. I will, if everything goes according to plan, I will be able to take these out of the deep freeze probably tonight, later on. This is pretty early in the evening, so I can put this into the deep freeze. I'm just going to put it over here for right now because there's no sense in trying to put it into the refrigerator freezer and then transfer it over to the deep freeze. So that's vegetables. You can also do it, I told you that, let me throw away my squash butts. You can also do it with fruit. So I'm going to use my cutting board here and I've got my little knife. Just real quickly, I'm already looking at this banana right here. This guy, I bought these for 69 cents for, I think, a pound, and he's already got some age on him, and I bought these on purpose because I want to be able to use these for banana bread, smoothies, cake, whatever. And every single recipe that you use bananas in, it always says to use a really, really ripe banana. And most banana recipes will call for 3 normal medium-sized bananas. That would be just about this size, not the big gigantic ones and not the little bitty ones. So this one's a little bit old. I'm putting him into the freezer a little bit early, but it's not going to be the end of the world, and I'll show you why here in just a second. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put these into my quart Ziploc bags, and I'm probably not supposed to be using their name, but that's just what we call them here. And remember that you're wanting to have the freezer strength, thickness, because it protects your items that you're putting into the freezer better. Okay, so little trick. If you don't want your bananas to have strings on them, and a lot of people are really creeped out by that, if you peel it from the bottom end instead of the top end, you won't have strings. And sometimes they're easier to peel if you do them this way. And there's no strings attached. Woohoo! So peel that all the way off, and that's ready to go into the trash. And like I said, most banana, whatever recipes call for 3 bananas. Now, you also kind of want them to be softened. Yes, I have a possessed light overneath my sink. What is that? So I'm going to mash this bad boy up just a little bit so that when he comes out of the deep freeze, he's going to be a little bit easier to work with. So, and I'll be able to see that there's one, but look how big that banana became. So I'm going to take my Ziploc, wow, this is a Sharpie. I'm going to take my Sharpie and write on my Ziploc, banana. And I'm going to put the date because it's important, but not so important that I have to make a decision between the 21st and the 22nd. Once again, I'm going to push the air out of it. And this is going to be a little bit easier because it's already kind of flat. So make sure that that's a little open. Then I'm just going to seal it up. And it's also ready to go into the deep freeze. And it is going to go into the deep freeze. All right. Real quickly, I'm going to show you the way that I do the strawberries. And strawberries are one of those things that go from perfectly ripe to rotten in about 20 minutes. And they're gross and they'll mildew on you and just give you a whole big mess. So what I did was I cut off the green top, and I'm going to slice these so that they'll lay flat. Like I told you, I have strawberries in there, and I'm just going to add to them. So see, they're flat. That way they'll lay on my piece of parchment paper, wax paper. This happens to be my cutting board that I'm going to be able to just transfer into my deep freeze. And you want to make sure that you have a hard flat surface like a cookie sheet to put these on as you are putting them into the deep freeze. So really quickly, this is a perfect way because these also will be great to go into smoothies, recipes, whatever. And they're at the peak of ripeness because you bought them fresh. And they're going to be individual pieces of fruit. So you know how sometimes you buy frozen fruit or vegetables at the grocery store, and when you go to use them, they come out in one big rock, and you only needed half the rock or a quarter of the rock? Well, this is one of those ways that you can keep that from happening to yourself. Go in, even if it's the stuff that you get at the store. See, this one is a little bit too ripe. He's probably really good, but he's got kind of a soft, slicky spot. So this is perfect. I bought these at the perfect time to do this and put them into my deep freeze. But also, if you bought them and you're like, life got in the way and you didn't have time to take care of them, those sort of things, this is a perfect thing to do. So this is how you save fruit and vegetables that are either about to go bad or you're not going to have the opportunity to use before they do, Or if you get a really good sale, then this is an opportunity for you to buy up stuff and fill your deep freeze with things that you're going to use throughout the year that you may not be able to have access to, or you don't want to spend a ton of money. So you buy fruits and vegetables in season, on sale, cut them up, lay them flat in your deep freeze on cookie sheets and parchment paper so that they don't stick to the cookie sheet. You get them out, you pop them into your freezer bags, you write what they are because sometimes it's a little hard to tell, and the date because you want to use the oldest things in your freezer first. Remember that if you're relying on a refrigerator freezer, the top of your refrigerator unit, you want to be very careful of the amount of time that you leave those items in your refrigerator. If it's in your deep freeze, you have a longer time span that you can use it. So I hope that this has helped you out with some things that you might have been throwing those things away when they get a little gross down in your vegetable crisper and those sort of things, and you feel like you've wasted money. Well, this is an opportunity for you to get those. You still use them, maybe on down the road, maybe not right now, and that way you're not wasting money and you're prepared should you get a wild hair and decide you want to cook something that is not in season, like squash, zucchini, strawberries, those sort of things like that. So this is Lisa with Your Best Friend's Mom. If you like this, please hit the like button. If you feel like this is something that a friend of yours or friends of yours would benefit from, please hit the share button and please subscribe to this channel because I've got a lot of new things coming and I've got a lot of information to give you and I don't want you to miss out on any of it. So be sure, like, share, and subscribe, and I appreciate it, and we'll see you next time. Bye-bye.